Okay, so on behalf of Ingram Micro and the technology consultants, Mark Miller, myself, Cheryl Thompson, and our awesome vendor business manager, Mitch Mendez, we want to welcome you, our business partners, to the Storage for Modern Data Protection and Cyber Resiliency webinar. Of course, you're hearing a lot about data being the most important corporate asset today, and protecting it is the top priority of every organization. So today we will discuss the fundamentals of data protection and cyber resiliency, and some of the IBM solutions you can offer to your customers. The topics that are going to be included today are data protection and high availability concepts, data protection and resiliency features of IBM storage portfolio, monitoring and management solutions, also IBM Software Defined Storage solutions, which we know as Spectrum. Including in those products will be Spectrum Protect Snapshot, Spectrum Copy Data Management, and we'll also be discussing Spectrum Protect Plus. Our speakers for the hour are Earl Springer and Jose Rodriguez. They are our most efficient and skilled IBM technical advocates for the Ingram Micro channel partners. Earl Springer mostly focuses in on our storage portfolio, and Jose is focused in on our IBM Spectrum Suite products. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Jose.
All right. Thank you, Cheryl. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for that great introduction, Cheryl. So I want to talk to you about modern data protection and cyber resiliency. Oops, sorry. As Cheryl mentioned, I'm Jose Rodriguez. I'm a partner technical advocate, primarily focusing on storage software. And my partner is Earl Springer, the guru of storage. And he's also a partner technical advocate, but I would say he's all-knowing. Okay, let's put it that way.
Oh, such praise.
All right. The agenda. First thing I want to do is let's discuss. Let me answer the question you should have. Why are you spending some time with us about this? Okay, so let's answer that question up front. Okay, then just so that we have a level set, let's go through a little refresher on data protection, some of the terms, why it's out there, and then discuss why customers should be looking at modernizing their current data protection environment. Let's be frank about it. Data protection is a mature solution, a mature environment. So almost all existing customers will already have some kind of data protection in their environment. But why should we consider or talk to them about modernizing what they have? And in that vein, we'll go through a little conversation starters, things that you might want to ask your customer or listen for when your customer is talking about that should trigger this is an opportunity for data protection. And then we'll go through the actual solution overview. And then we have some slides on there that gives you links to additional resources. Okay. With that, let's move forward. So why should we be talking about data protection? I'm not going to go through every point in this slide. It's already a couple of slides that are coming through. The most important thing to know is, and we've known this for a few years now, data is growing. There's more and more and more data out there. Okay. And the data is becoming more valuable to your customers. We've seen the presentations before about the data being the new oil, the new gold. It is the new resource, the new asset that your customers can go out there and use to make themselves more efficient, to open up new markets, and to beat the competition. Okay, so that alone should be the reason why you want to talk to your customers about data protection. The fact that it's growing so big, it's also the backup windows, if they exist, have shrunk, right? So you have to have other methods of being able to still protect that data. We also have new workloads that are coming out, new ways of using that data. Customers are being very innovative about how they can deliver things. And the data is the asset that they're using to be able to come up with those methods. So let's go through a little bit of a data protection refresher. Okay. The reasons for data protection, right? They've been around for a long time. First one was always hardware, and we do this for our own PCs. We hopefully do back up our data on our PCs, on our laptops, at our workstations at work or at home, or we send it out to the cloud. But we make backups because we know the hardware fails, and somehow you're going to have to restore your environment. Another reason you do that is because, well, what about inconsistencies in your data, right? All of a sudden, your application is writing bad data and it's overwriting your database. You want to be able to get back to the point where before it was doing that. Human error, we've done it. Oops, I deleted a file. Oops, I deleted a volume. And if you ever want to get in touch with me, I'll tell you about oops, how I did when I was back at Bank of America and deleted a whole pool, and how embarrassing that was. I'm going to skip 4 and go straight to 5 first, because that was what was in the news before. Things like 9/11, hurricanes, earthquakes. I live in California, so I know about that quite a bit. But disaster recoveries, being able to recover your whole environment in case something happened to it, right? That's the reason you needed data protection. Now let's go to number 4, because now it's surfacing a lot and it's in the news a lot. And it happens to have the same name as something else that's in the news a lot: viruses, cyber threats. We are seeing more and more incidents of cyber threats. The statement now is it's not if you're going to get hit by it, but when you're going to get hit by it, and what are you going to do about it? Okay. So for these 5 major reasons, it's the reason you need data protection. And I'm actually going to change this a little. Let's go through some of the terms. Okay. I'm not going to go into every detail. Air gap, just making sure there is some kind of separation between the copies of your data. Okay. Backup, we should all know what a backup is. Data breach, that's when something happened to your data. Someone got into your data, or some incident happened that puts your data at suspect. Encryption, we should all understand that. Intrusion detection system, okay? Understanding when something or someone got into your environment. When you talk to your customers about this, most of them will say, I've got a security group that handles that. One of the things you should ask them about is, okay, are they also concerned about the data? Most of the time, security groups are more concentrated on intrusions into your network, into your environment, into the server, unauthorized use of the servers. But very little, as of now, has been paid attention to the actual data. How was the data interrupted? How was it corrupted? Right? Malware, that's been in the news, so we should understand that. And then ransomware, definitely we should know what that is, right? Lots of incidents of that in the news. And Earl actually had a story on something like this.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. So obviously, I think everybody would be aware of the Maersk story. You know, Maersk, the Danish shipping company. I think it was, it's like 2 years ago at least. Probably third quarter, I think, 2017. But they got affected by the NotPetya virus. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. That's, believe it or not, that thing still pops up every once in a while. Some variation of it pops up every once in a while. But they were one of the first to be truly affected by that NotPetya virus. And to, no fault of their own, they had a highly skilled security team. They had the latest and greatest technology available, at their disposal. And they were affected because of an unknown, basically, defect in Microsoft Windows in the underlying code. But basically within minutes, out of, I think it was a bank in the Ukraine that they had connected to. Now, you understand, Maersk, the shipping company, They have 600 locations around the world, 600 offices, and they connect to thousands of banks and then hundreds of government agencies, customs agencies around the world, all interconnected on their network. And lo and behold, this NotPetya came through this Ukraine network connection, and within minutes, it had spread throughout Maersk's organization around the world. And in literally about 30 minutes, they were crippled. They had basically, about 1,000 ships out in the oceans that basically were, pardon the pun, but dead in the water. And 80 of the largest shipping ports in the world suddenly ground to a halt, right? So basically 1/5 of the world's trade suddenly ground to a halt because of ransomware. And again, through no fault of their own. But kudos to them on their ability to recover very quickly. So as Jose was saying, it's just a matter of time before everyone's going to get affected. What really comes to mind is how fast you can recover. Maersk was able to recover. Basically within 8 days, they were pretty much back up and operational. And then after 30 days, everything was pretty much back to normal for them. But it cost them almost $1 billion when all was said and done, between lost business and then obviously implementing new measures and hiring consultants and doing whatever it took to get back up and running. But it was, that's just one company that very day, because of all the systems and companies that connected to Maersk, it spread from Kraft Heinz, here in the United States got affected. There was hospital systems out of Pennsylvania that got affected the exact same day by the same virus. But just to go to show the extent of how fast, you can go from business as usual to basically ground to a halt because of a virus today. So that's my story.
So with that story, this is a story you can go out to your customers and actually start talking to them about, hey, what about your data protection? What about cyber resiliency? So let's get back to some of the other terms here. For recovery point objective, RTO and RPO have been terms that we've been using for quite some time, but just to make the definition proper, point objective is basically to what point do you want your data to be restored? Real quickly, right? Time objective, how long will it take for me to get my environment back up and running? Okay. Vulnerabilities, go out to the dictionary. It's pretty much the same definition. Worm, everyone should kind of understand what that is. Few more terms here. High availability, okay? And that's just basically being able to set up your environment so that it could still function with components failing, okay? Pieces of it failing. Resiliency is how you protect your data and your applications, okay? So that you can easily be able to get back up and running from any type of issue. Now, here are a couple of terms that people use interchangeably, but they really do mean different things. Disaster recovery and business continuity. Disaster recovery is basically being able to restore your infrastructure so that can run back in normal operations in the shortest time possible. Okay. Business continuity really encompasses DR. So DR is part of BC, but it's a much wider net. It's all the operational stuff that you need to have your business continue working, either through the disaster or through the incident, or immediately after the incident, to be able to continue doing business as usual. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about data protection. And you know what? I think let's really call this data management, because as you see, as it's evolving, it's really more than just protecting your data that you should really be talking to your customers about. If you look at the bottom bubble, that's basically what most people think of and thought of for data protection. It's recovery, disaster recovery, backup and restores. That's what a lot of people always thought about a data protection environment. Okay? But we're finding out that data protection now is encompassing a lot more things. lot more functions, which now brings you into data management. You've got customers that are saying, hey, I've got copies of these data, of this data. How can I use these copies more meaningful? How about making copies for applications to do development? How about making copies for QA, for integration testing, for performance, to make sure that they work properly at the right spots, right? And with that comes more and more copies of the data, so you have to be able to manage what's out there. Not just the fact that you made a backup of it and protect, but the fact that you've got copies out there. Do you know who owns those copies? Are there orphan copies of that stuff, right? The application went away or it's no longer needed, and they're still out there taking a valuable resource. Also, data is moving into a multi-cloud environment. We know customers are using more and more cloud services, and they're running applications. What about that data that's out there? How do you manage it? How do you protect it? We spoke already about cyber resiliency and how important that is to be able to handle that. And since data is a valuable asset now, how do we use it for other applications, right? For data-driven, as they call transformation, for AI-type workloads, for customer satisfaction type stuff, for new ways of delivering our product or new products that you might want to do, or a way of beating our competition, right? So all of this really is encompassed in now into data protection and really should be data management, because there's a lot of other things you can do to help you manage that whole environment. The components that you have in a data protection, data management environment are, we know about data creation, storage systems, we know about servers, VMs, applications. The new workloads now, new environments of containers, of clouds, whether infrastructure, platform, or software as a service. We know they create more data, but how do we also protect them so that those environments can be brought up quickly in the case you need to, right? The basic function of protection, backup and recovery. The old traditional backups of putting backups on tapes, or disk to tape, or disk to cloud, or all those types of environments, functions, right? We now know, and we have other ways of making copies of data, not just the software, but snapshots and clones. And that could be done by an operating system. VMware comes up as an example. They can make snaps of your VM machines. We also have Oracle that can make copies of their databases, clones, and remote replication of it. Right? We also have remote replication. But these functions can also be done by a storage platform, a storage subsystem. And Earl's going to give you a little more detail about that. But think about using that as part of your whole data management, data protection environment. Being able to have the subsystems do it rather than the host, it means less server cycles. Which could mean smaller processors, could mean cheaper licensing, things like Oracle, right? Because you don't need to use the cycles to do the backups and to do copies. And you want this whole environment to be efficient. You want compression and deduplication. You want it to also be secure. Have encryption of your data, have that air gap, and be able to provide worm capabilities for specific type of data. Questions? All right. That environment, that data management, data protection environment, has to be able to be simple. What you really want to be able to do is get the end users to start making their own copies if they want to manage that. You want them to be able to do their own restore, so your storage admin is not spending his time just restoring data for others and doing more useful functions. you can create policies for them on how long data should be retained and how many copies should be retained and where they should be placed. And then since there's more and more data, you have to have a way of being able to manage it with some kind of catalog, being able to find out quickly what's out there. What are you managing? But already talked about before, data reuse and making it a self-service, and reporting. You've got to be able to go out there and show what you're protecting, what you're managing, and who's got access to it. Be able to have some kind of alerting for, I'm running out of space, either my primary space or maybe even my backup repository. Or what about for cyber resiliency? How about, hey, something funny is happening here. You might be a potential infected by a virus, some kind of a ransomware. Wouldn't that be a nice type of alerting? Well, I wouldn't bring up the statement unless I can tell you that, yeah, we've got the capability of doing that for you. Okay. Where you put the data is important. Can you copy the tape? Can you put it out in the cloud? And of course, we also have the capability now. We've got another product called Spectrum Discover, which I don't go into a lot of detail, but we are adding functions where it will be able to actually associate metadata for data that's been backed up by Spectrum Protect and Protect Plus. Where that helps is knowing what's inside a file that's been protected, right? You want to go out after a file that has a particular customer name or whatever it is, a company name or something like that. The old way would have been, I've got to restore the file and see what's in it. Well, now, and I believe the feature is very soon going to come out, or it's already out. But Spectrum Discover will be able to actually have that association between protected data that's in Spectrum Protect and the actual files, so that you can just do a query on Spectrum Discover and then find out exactly which files are in Protect that you need to be able to restore and get what you need, as opposed to just restoring just to see if it has the data that you need, right? All right. So, gone by this pretty quickly, but now let's talk about why customers should consider modernizing their data protection. Well, let's go from left to right on these bubbles here. I have not come across a customer that says that cost is not an issue, that lowering costs would not be a big benefit. So that definitely is one thing you want to talk to your customers about. What about lowering their cost of data management, of data protection, that whole environment? Because we have more data, because it's very valuable, and because the backup windows are shrinking or have gone away, you've got to be able to improve the performance of doing this function. Okay. We discussed already that you've got to make it simple. You've got to make it SLA-based policies, and making it self-service so that your storage admins can do more important functions rather than just restoring files for your user community. You've got to be able to do a multi-cloud environment because companies are going into a multi-cloud environment. Okay, so you've got to be able to protect and manage the data that are in other clouds. And really, the bottom line is, and what you want to implant on your customers is, they want to be agile. They want to be flexible, not only to handle what they're doing now, but what's coming down the line. Be prepared for new workloads that might come around. Be prepared for an explosion of data that they may have because of the new applications that they're thinking or that they are creating. And hopefully because they did the right thing and they were able to beat their competition, or they came up with an innovative way of delivering things, that data is making them, having them grow, hopefully quicker than they thought they would, right? That's the bottom line. What you want to do is you want to create an environment that can handle what you have now, can handle spikes, and can handle what you might have in the future. A couple of things you might want to talk to them about as a vision is your environment capable of scale up or scale out? Right? Can I just add components, small components, and make it a grid-like, so that scale out? Or can I just make it a bigger environment with the few instances that I have? By the way, Spectrum Protect has the capability of doing either one. Spectrum Protect Plus has the same capability. You can put it in a larger server and make it a larger repository, or you can make multiple instances of Spectrum Protect, and they can replicate to a single Spectrum Protect instance if you want. Cyber resiliency, we already discussed the need for that, but can you have end-to-end encryption? Can your solution do air gapping? Does it have multi-factor authorization kind of capabilities? I hinted at this, malware detection. Can it alert you that you may have been infected by a ransomware virus? And can I show chain of custody for the keys that I have for my encryption? Right? New workloads that are coming down the line, Docker and Kubernetes, containers. You may have customers now that are not on containers and not thinking about containers, but it's going to happen. New applications, newer functions are coming out, and they're being developed in a container environment. AI-infused data protection. And this is really something that I want to highlight because IBM definitely has an advantage here. Spectrum Protect and Protect Plus right now has the capability, because it's looking at your data, your day-to-day routine of how much data you back up and what are your compression and deduplication rates for the data that's being backed up. And over time, we have a pattern of what your customer does. Let's say one day that pattern is broken. All of a sudden, there's a lot of data that's being backed up, and your compression and deduplication rates have really dropped to almost zero, or cut in half by what you normally would do. Right? That is an indication that you may have been infected by a ransomware virus. What does ransomware virus do? It normally goes out there and touches every file you have out there, and it encrypts it, so that later on, 6 months, 8 months down the road, I send you a little message saying, hey, all your stuff is encrypted, send me X number of dollars, and I'll give you the key to de-encrypt everything, right? You're kind of out of luck because your backups are, unless you have an extremely large environment, you don't have copies from 8 months, 9 months ago. It's better to detect this as soon as possible. Now, we give you an alert. We don't tell you absolutely you're infected. We tell you you might be infected. The reason is you may have a new application that you created, a lot more data out there, right? Or you may have restored an application because of some integrity issue. You've got to be prepared for that. But at least you've got some kind of alerting. Now, where we're really adding even more information to this is, on the roadmap is Storage Insights. We'll be looking at storage at Spectrum Protect, and we are collecting this data from all the accounts that have Storage Insights, in which are thousands. What if we're collecting that data and we see that in Asia, 10, 20 accounts are starting to get this alert? Then we see it in the Middle East, in Eastern Europe. We see that pattern, and we can start alerting the rest of the geography through Storage Insight that, hey, there's a potential of a ransomware virus going, a ransomware pandemic, if you want to call it that way. I know it may not be the proper thing to say right now, but that may be happening. Wouldn't that be very valuable to your customers, right? That is something we can produce for them. Okay. So now let's talk a little bit about how you might talk to your customers about data protection and about modernizing their data protection, or listen for things that they may say that might pop up. Okay. Ask them or listen for the different types of data that they have. Oh, I've got containers now. I've got Oracle data, I've got SQL data, I've got VMs that I've got multiple different environments that I have to protect. That's something you might want to listen to. Kind of problem, and how quickly can you recover your data if an incident happens, right? And how granular? Is it only at the file level or from a database? Different components of a database, right? Or an email. Can I do a specific email or just a mailbox? Those kinds of things you might want to start asking, right? For business resiliency, for cyber resiliency, Earl gave you a story that the problem with, right? And we have other things you can talk to them about. Hey, do you have air gap between your backups, your copies? Those kinds of things you might want to bring up. You're going to get the presentation, so that's why I'm not going through every line by line. Just give you the highlights of what you might want to consider. For data retention, some data you may hold for years. Some data, because of compliancy issues or governmental issues, you have to keep for years. Should you keep it on higher cost storage? Can I put it out in the cloud? Can I put it up on tape? Right? Can I have multiple copies? Right? And what about the sensitive data? Is it encrypted? Do I have the keys for it? Right? Those kinds of things. And then, are your applications using copies of the data out there? Right? Or are they making up fictitious data? That's actually the worst way to be able to test your application to see if it's good. And by the way, when you're making copies of that data, sometimes that data has sensitive information in there that you shouldn't really be passing on to developers, right? Social security numbers or healthcare patient IDs and patients' names. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to make copies of that and maybe masking those fields because they're not as important, let's say, for some of the reporting, while you're making the copies? Well, guess what? We've got the capability of doing that. It's called copy data management. It's got the capability of saying, as you make a copy of this environment, of this file, of this database, here are the fields that I want you to mask. Right? So. Already talked about the cloud, but in this issue, what you want to talk about is you have cloud environments, right? How are you managing that? How are you protecting it? How are you reporting on those types of environments? Okay, is all of this automated so that my storage admin doesn't have to do this, every day, or it make more use of their knowledge, their services, and talk about the things about that roadmap we were talking about, the vision. Can you scale up, scale out, right? Do you have the capability of doing cyber resiliency alerting? Those kinds of things. Do you have the capability of allowing departments to do their own work, right? Saving your storage admins for more important things. Well, okay. And the last one I would say is talk to your customers about the environments they currently have. If they have net backup or if they have Commvault, talk about the number of servers they have. And by the way, in Commvault you have this they call it a feature. But their environment is made out of a ComServe and then multiple media servers, right? And we find out that those media servers just keep growing. There's multiplying more and more of them, right? Same thing with NetBackup. NetBackup has the same concept. They have media servers and they have the master servers, and they seem to multiply. Right? But then also talk to your customers about what about the repository where they're putting their data. A lot of customers use data domain as the repository because they get the deduplication out of it. But we're finding out that data domain, you turn off the lights and they multiply like rabbits. All of a sudden 2 comes 4, comes 8, comes 16, and they've got lots of those things, right? And it's harder and harder to manage that. Well, we've got a solution that, first of all, you would use less servers to be able to manage all that, and we can do the deduplication and compression out of those services, either from where it's being backed up, the source, or at the target at the repository. Okay. All right. So all of this to prep you up on what our solutions are. Okay, really? But you have to have that conversation with the customer. You have to have them have a vision. You have to have them asking you, so how do you solve my problem, right? And here's how we solve our problem. Okay. We broke this up into two components, the front end and the back end. Okay. The front end is the software, or it's the component that actually does the management of the data, right? The back end is the repository, and also some functions of that repository making copies for you. Okay. I'm going to talk about Archive, CDM, Protect, and Protect Plus. Okay. Fortunately, it's not in that order, but let's go this way. Spectrum Protect. Okay. Some of you know it as TSM, Typically Storage Manager. It is basically, and I call it a data management solution, because it has more components than just backup and restore. It has the capability of providing worm capabilities for you on that what's being copied. It's got the capabilities of creating an ILM, Information Lifecycle Management environment for you, where if you want the users to still think the data is readily accessible, but the actual payload, the big piece of the data, you put it in the lower tier storage, and the customer can easily pick whatever it wants. It has the capability of using the cloud. It's got the capability of writing to tapes, right? It's policy based, and it's flexible for data sharing. Okay? Spectrum Protect Plus is, by the way, eventually, I'm not making a big announcement, but Protect and Protect Plus will be one product. Okay, but Protect Plus for now is really for the new workloads. It's for VMs and Hyper-V environments. Red Hat's KVM is quickly coming out, and I can't say that Citrix Zen is on the roadmap. It's not enough of a market there for that right now, but it's for those type of environments. It's also for the new type of databases. MongoDBs, Cassandra, those kinds of things. Office 365 gets protected with Protect Plus. And it also is for container environments. Okay. It's got the capability of quickly creating VMs for data reuse. So like for the other environments that we were talking about. CDM is copy data management, and it's got the capability of managing clones and snapshots, not only of IBM platforms, but of other vendors' platforms. One of its big tools is to be able to go out there and look at a customer's environment and tell you the copies of data that are out there and associate it to what servers those copies are being used by, or point out that there is no server associated with this copy. This is an orphan entry out there. This is space that's being taken up that no one's using, right? That's a perfect thing to do. It also has the capability of also making snapshots and integrate with some applications to make those replicated copies for other uses. It's got the capability of cleaning up after it's, let's say, an environment was created and you're now deleting it if you want. Spectrum Archive is a way of being able to use the most cost-effective data storage environment available, which is tapes and a tape library. And it still give your customers the ability to easily get to put data on tape and to retrieve data from tape. You don't have to remember what tape number your file was in. You can actually just mount the tape, and it looks like a directory, and see what files are in there, and you can drag and drop those files, in and out of that environment. Okay, that's very quickly a high level on each of the solution sets there. I'm going to let our guru do the back-end offering, because he can definitely do it more justice than I can.
Oh, such praise. Thank you. So IBM offers a whole series of hardware-based, back-end solutions. I'm just going to focus on the Spectrum Virtualize solution for this slide. I'm not going to get into DS8 and some of the other products, but I'll talk about Spectrum Virtualize-based systems and tape on the next slide. But as Jose was mentioning in some earlier slides, that we do have some integrated HADR capabilities that are built into the Spectrum Virtualized, in this case, Spectrum Virtualized software stack, that allow us to do these point-in-time copies of data, or remote copies of data, or have our copies replicated to the cloud or secondary location, or even now a tertiary site, because we can have 3-site replication, with Spectrum Virtualized systems today. And we're doing this on the storage array level. We're not doing it on the application level, on the host side. And that is going to save a lot of CPU cycles on the host side. And of course, the host can continue to do more work and just leave all the data protection side, to the storage subsystem. And because it can do it very well, of course. And it also gives us additional capabilities where we can actually fail over very quickly. So we have technologies like HyperSwap, where we could have site level failover, and we can fail over very quickly, and we can be assured that there is a verbatim copy of the data from the primary site on the failover site. Thanks to some of these integrated technologies. And then, of course, these are only some of the many data protection technologies that we have integrated. We also have distributed RAID that allows us to have the customer back to a high availability state very quickly. If a drive fails, we can rebuild drives, not in days, not in weeks in some cases, but in hours. We can actually rebuild failed drives, all that lost data from a failed drive, and customers back into a high availability state very quickly. And then can you switch sites for me, please? Thank you. And then looking at tape, of course, Jose talked about tape a few times here. And tape, by all means, is getting a lot of attention, again, for various reasons. One, data protection. That's a given. And tape's been doing data protection pretty much since the 1960s, right? Tape came out since, early 1950s, I believe. Primarily primary storage for mainframes, and then secondary storage for mainframes. And then it found new life, new purpose, right, as backup, and then backup and archive. And now tape's being redefined again for not only data protection, so traditional backup that we've known and loved for a long time, but again, archive, long-term storage, still popular use case for tape, but also to help store just massive amounts of data that customers are accumulating, right? So as Jose mentioned, there's fantastic value in data. Everybody's realized the value of data today, and they're stockpiling it, right? And all the new workloads are generating data, they're capturing data. Here's the problem. You saw on one of Jose's early charts, he's talking about that 10-fold data increase. And you got to understand, when Gartner and IDC did those numbers, back in 2015, 2016 timeframe. So it's actually accelerating a little faster in terms of data growth. So basically, the world's data will almost grow tenfold within the next 5 years, right? So that's by, let's say, 2025. A lot of that data growth is around, obviously, rich media, becoming very popular. But like I said, customers are stockpiling everything. Now, here's the problem. With all this new data that's being generated, captured, and stockpiled, by 2025, we're only going to be able to store about 21%, according to IDC, 21% of the world's data. If we combine all the manufacturing capabilities from the hard drive manufacturers and flash storage manufacturers, we could only meet 21% of the storage capacity by 2025. So where the heck the other 79% of the data going to be stored? Guess where? It's going to be on tape. So tape's got new relevance again. just for helping customers not only protect data, but stockpile, manage all that growth for them down the road. Put things into perspective again, today our biggest tape customers are the cloud service providers, believe it or not. And I always love it when customers say, I'm washing my hands of tape, I'm going to the cloud, only to ironically have their data end up back onto tape, right? Once it hits the cloud. But again, just to highlight the growth in data, IBM plays in two arenas in the tape world. We obviously have our own proprietary tape technology that we call 3592 enterprise tape, also known as Jaguar tape technology. That represents a very small percentage of the overall market for us. IBM is also a member of the LTO consortium. They're a founding member. 99% of all the data stored on tape today is actually stored on LTO technology. And LTO is obviously a generational technology. We're in Gen 8 now, LTO 8. LTO 9 is going to be introduced later this year. And it's okay, Jose. But LTO, if you look on the LTO consortium's roadmap, every 2 years we get a new generation. So by 2026, we're in actually LTO 12. And LTO 12 is each cartridge, right, is going to hold 240 terabytes of data. Just to show you what our customers are going to have to store in a very short time, 6 years from now. Today, an LTO tape cartridge, we can store about 30 terabytes of data compressed, right? So we're going to have basically 240 terabytes of capacity in 6 years on every cartridge. Again, just to highlight how much data customers are going to have. But to get back to I know I'm rambling on here, but the data protection side, we got to remember that, by the time a company realizes that a data breach has taken place, about 206 days on average has passed. So, consider a situation where your client is actually replicating data, as Jose was talking about earlier, to a remote site using snapshots or doing incremental backups and so on. Unless the customer knows the exact date of when that data breach took place, they may have to revert days, weeks, or months, right, of data and restore all that data. Are they going to have that data? 8 months worth of data or 9 months worth of data that Jose was talking about? Probably not with backup solutions today that customers are using. So again, a lot of renewed interest on a lot of our, obviously security conscious customers. They want that assurity that they can do that if they need to, right? So again, new interest in tape, allowing them to store a year's worth of backups if need be, so they can rebuild their data at any point in time and do it quickly, right? Getting back to that RPO conversation, if it's a critical application, it's got to be back up and running very quickly. To restore from the cloud is it could take weeks, depending on how much data has to be brought back. The internet's good, but it's not that good yet. It could take weeks, but with tape, it could take hours, right, to be back up and running. So again, another reason for tape when it comes to data protection. And tape, in terms of reliability, is designed. It's had a lot of R&D over the past 6 decades. It has the lowest bit rate error, lower than flash and hard drive. It's designed out of the box, for 30-year lifespan, the tape cartridges. So tape has a lot of, like I said, a lot of good things going for it in the area of data protection and cyber resiliency, because out of the box, again, it's air gapped, right? And a lot of customers are looking for air gapping today. They need a surety that, if their data cannot be accessed. So if data can't be accessed, it can't be zipped up and encrypted and held for ransom. Okay? And of course, this just a little more on the Spectrum Archive, as Jose was talking about earlier as well. Spectrum Archive really makes it easy to interact with data stored on tape. It makes it so easy for users and applications to write data to tape and to read data from tape. And tape, that technology alone is based off of linear tape file system, LTFS. It's really allowed customers to now have tape as an active tier of storage in their environments as well. Very popular in the media and entertainment arenas. ESPN is an example that uses a technology called FLAPE, which is like a combination of flash and tape. YouTube is another great example of using technology like linear tape file systems in conjunction with tape libraries and flash, right? Where you look at YouTube, they have, probably about 500 hours now that people are sitting at home. 500 hours of video get uploaded every second, to YouTube now. It's not ending up on flash and disk. Very little of it does. The popular stuff would, but most of it actually ends up on tape. And then they create what are called these stub files with like the first, minute and a half of a video, let's say, and information of where the rest of that video file is on tape. And then once you watch a video past a certain point, a request is made to the tape library to go and fetch the cartridge with that remaining video, and it'll seek it, find it, and then read it and splice it at the right time. And it's all seamless to end users as you're watching your video. But tape technology allows these media companies to store just incredible amounts of data because of the high density, the amount of data you can store per square foot of what they call tile space in the data center. No other storage medium can come close to that. But that's my tape story, Jose.
Thanks, Earl.
Short but sweet, right?
Yeah. So with that, this presentation has some slides with additional resources, links where you can go out and get additional information on any of these solutions. And I also want to, Cheryl, I'll do this for you here.
Sure.
We've got two more sessions coming up. On May 14th, we're going to do a big data and AI session for you. And in June, we're going to do a Red Hat integration. We're going to talk about how Red Hat, uses storage and containers and Cloud Paks. With that, I think we have a few minutes if there are any questions. I don't know, Cheryl, do you have the chat up and you can look at it, or do you
yes, I have it up. I don't see any chat questions. But if anybody has any questions, please do unmute yourself and ask the questions that you may want to pose to Jose or Earl. I see one chat question just came up. Will you please share the presentation? Yes, we will be sharing the presentation with everybody that registered. And we will also share the link for the replay.
And I'm also going to include, there's an article that came out today that talks about the 10 top data management trends for 2020, which may also arm you with things to go talk to your customer about. Things about, how the customers are believing that the data is a valuable asset. They want to use it for customer experiences. Some of the other things that you might want to talk to your customers about, the fear of having bad data and how they're using more and more data. There are different positions that are actually in the IT industry that are being created. CDO is now a new position that you're hearing a lot about. We definitely know about data scientists, and then just sometimes that people don't trust what data you have out there. Okay, so we'll include that in there. Yeah.
Awesome. With that, I want to tell our business partners that are on the call now, if you saw any of these solutions that you would like to have a deeper dive on specifically for your organization or for your end user customer, please reach out to myself, Cheryl Thompson, cheryl.thompson@ingrammicro.com, or Mark Miller at mark.miller@ingrammicro.com. And as your technology consultants, we will definitely get everything set up so that we can have this deep dive conversation with your team or with your end user client. With that, if there are no other questions, I want to thank everybody for joining. And Jose and Earl, thank you once again for sharing your wisdom and knowledge with our partners.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.